Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today you are joining me in my BMW M4, and the idea in today's video is going to be I'm going to be comparing the two gearboxes, the DCT that's fitted in my M4 and the DSG that's fitted in my Mark 8 Golf GTI. I'm going to try and conclude which gearbox I prefer, whether it's the DCT or the DSG on a daily basis. Both of my cars are performance cars, so I really want to find out which one is fitted with a better gearbox. But before I go out there on those country lanes and start testing out these gearboxes, let me show you around my M4. So I've had this car for about 2 months. It's finished off in the San Marino blue. I have put on a few things on this car. On the exterior you can see I've got this carbon spoiler and I've got the carbon diffuser. The rest of the car is pretty much standard. I haven't really done anything to it. I haven't got any like splitters or anything like that. It's got the 666M alloy wheels, but I made a few changes on the inside which I covered in the last video. So the main thing to know on the interior is that I've upgraded the steering wheel to a leather Alcantara flat bottom steering wheel, courtesy of Royal steering wheels, and I must say it's got a fantastic feel. So now that we've had like a quick walk around of the car, let's go on to those country lanes and experience what this DCT gearbox is like. So just a point to note, my car is absolutely stock. It's producing 450 horsepower and 550 newton meters of torque. I haven't really fiddled with like any power upgrades for my car. The only thing I have done is I have got the GTS flash done on the car and some coding courtesy of Z coding. If you're in the BMW scene, you know all about Z, and that really just improves like say some of like the features of the car. So for example, it improves like say the diff, the traction, the dampers, the steering, and obviously the GTS flash on the gearbox. It doesn't really do much in terms of like say altering with the ratios of the gearbox, but it just makes the changes a little bit smoother because the DCT gearbox is a gearbox that is quite jerky in its operation. I'm just pootling around town at the moment and I've got the car just set up in its basic comfort mode. The gearbox has got 3 levels of, let's call it ferocity maybe, and you can alter that by the drive logic button on the gear shifter. I've got it set to like the first level anyway, so it kind of changes gears at around 2000 RPM and tries to maximize fuel efficiency by staying in the highest gear possible. It is quite noticeable in terms of like kick down. You just prod the throttle and there you go, it kicks like down, drops a couple of clogs, and it is quite responsive from that point. When you go into let's say flappy paddle mode in like say drive logic gear 1 level, it's quite slow to respond, even on like say downshifts and upshifts as well. But as you progress through driving modes and you're into like let's say Sports Plus, the car and the gearbox responds really well as well, and we're going to explore some of that in a short time. So why not just show this in real time anyway? And look at that, that's a lovely M3 competition that's just gone past. Anyway, so I'm going to put the car into my M1 mode, which basically means it's in Sports Plus on the throttle, Sport on the suspension, and Comfort on the steering. And my gear ferocity now is in level 2. I'm in manual mode as well. And the gear changes are fairly instant on the upshifts. I'm already in 4th gear. I am changing myself anyway, but it is literally a pull on the paddle and the gears do change. Here you go, downshifting. And the steering feel, it just feels fantastic with this new Alcantara feel. Yeah, it's pretty much exactly what you'd expect from a double clutch gearbox. You want to pull on the pedal and you want the car to literally change gear as and when it does. There is a bit of a delay when you want to change up, especially when you've got the car in like say the level 2 on the gearbox. If I flick that into let's say level 3, yeah, it's a little bit more quicker, definitely a lot more quicker and sharper in level 3 than it is in level 2. The only thing I don't like about it in level 3 is the fact that when you are upshifting, you get this little jolt, like a little kick. Yeah, you just kind of feel it there. It just kind of like pushes you forward, which can be a bit uncomfortable. There's the M3 up there as well. He's probably thinking I'm going to chase him. I'm going to just ring it out a little bit now on this stretch. It definitely feels a lot more sharper in level 3, and it's exactly what you'd expect from this gearbox. Yeah, it's pretty sharp. So one thing I know, that this gearbox doesn't have like an auto hold function where it'll kind of hold you like in traffic and you can let go of the brake pedal and whatnot. So that's a bit annoying. However, unlike other transmissions where you let go of the brake pedal, it will probably like roll forward. This doesn't even do that. This will roll backwards. It's like driving like an automatic with like a manual characteristic of a car. So it feels like, although it's got like say an automatic clutch, it just lets it go, and like on the hill you can just kind of roll back a little bit. That's a bit unusual about this DCT gearbox, but it's so damn sharp. Yeah, the way this thing just changes gears, especially higher up in the rev range, this sort of pushing on kind of thing, it's so quick. But coming back to like say the DCT element of this car, I think it's a fantastic gearbox. And just put the car back into its comfort mode, let the car just do its own thing, and just enjoy my drive back and pick up the Golf GTI. But coming back to the DCT element of this car, I think it's a fantastic gearbox because it really makes me feel like I'm driving a full-on sports car. You know, I've got like the power, I've got a double clutch gearbox. You know, that's, for me, that's kind of peak performance car. Let's head over and pick up the Golf GTI. So guys, you are now joining me in my Mark 8 Golf GTI. This one's fitted with the 7-speed DSG gearbox, and we're going to compare this to the M4's 7-speed DCT. Now before we go back out on those roads again, I'll quickly give you a walk around of my GTI. So this is my Mark 8 Golf GTI. It's finished off in the King's Red. I've done quite a few styling upgrades which I'll talk you through right now. So from the rear end, I've got this gloss black Club Sports inspired roof spoiler, which makes the back end look quite smart now. Also, I've had the car lowered on 20mm racing line springs, which gives the car a purposeful look and improves the handling somewhat. I've changed the alloy wheels to these 18-inch bowler wheels. It makes my car look a little bit more individual to the way I wanted it to look. I've stuck on these black door mirror covers which now match the rear spoiler of the car as well. The front end is pretty much unchanged. I didn't really fancy putting on a front splitter because I know as soon as I hit like a speed bump, it'll just fall straight off because the car's been lowered. So the interior is pretty much unchanged. The only thing that I have modified are the flappy paddles. These are off a Mark 8 Golf R. These are more extended compared to the little buttons that you normally get on the GTI, which don't really do it much. So these do have quite a nice feel as they are extended. So guys, there you have it. That's my Mark 8 GTI. Let's now go on those roads and explore this 7-speed DSG gearbox. So as before, I'm going to go on the same roads as I was in the M4. And now that I'm in the Mark 8 GTI, I mean, this car has always impressed me in the way it's kind of set off in comfort mode. It actually feels quicker than my M4 does, like just around town, and the way it kind of like changes gears and whatnot as well. So it's quite, let's call it, more responsive as well. Like it just gets down the road a lot quicker. Maybe the size has got something to do with it or whatnot, but yeah, this is always kind of impresses me in how like this just works around town. Like the gearbox as well always seems to find the right gear and seems to be fairly efficient. Again, in comfort mode, this kind of changes gear around like say the 2000 RPM kind of mark as well, and again tries to be in the highest possible gear to maximize fuel efficiency. I'm going to put it through like obviously the sports mode and into flappy paddle mode because that's where this kind of really comes alive as well. I've got to say that I do love the steering wheel in this GTI. It's much smaller than the one I've got in the M4, well proportioned. You know, you've got these real nice thumb cutouts and whatnot, and even though the one in my M4 has been retrimmed, this is still better than that. Okay, so in real time again, I'm gonna now put the car into its sport settings, and I'm gonna go into manual mode, and we're gonna give this a go. Obviously in sport mode it does change the car's tone, which is fine. You can feel that the sound of this car does change quite a lot, because it does certainly now doesn't sound like a 4-cylinder. The downshifts are definitely more apparent. There isn't like a different modes for the gearbox like the way you find in the M4. You've just got sport and manual, so we're in the manual mode. I have noticed that the characteristics are fairly similar, in that when you upshift, there's a bit of a delay from when you pull the paddle to when it actually changes gears and the revs drop, but the downshifts are definitely much sharper. Okay, now that's interesting. When the car goes past 4,000 RPM and you upshift, it's much more instant. A lot of standing water here, but let's try that again. Yeah, that is definitely more instant when you're passing like a certain RPM range. I think in principle both of the gearboxes are very similar in terms of being double clutch gearboxes. I do find that the DSG gearbox is probably a little bit easier to live with on a day-to-day basis, and what I mean by that is, if someone didn't tell you that this was a DSG gearbox, you'd probably just forgive it for thinking it's actually a standard auto gearbox. The gear changes in this are quite smooth, they're less apparent, whereas in the DCT gearbox you do get that jolt at times when you are changing gears manually. This just seems to slush them together a little bit better. Quite an impressive gearbox in all honesty. Yeah, you get the DSG fart as well at times. Upshifts are quite slow at certain RPMs, but the higher up the rev range it feels much quicker, and I think that's the same with the DCT gearbox. But with the one in the M4, the DCT, you find that you don't have to climb up the rev range so high for it to become quite apparent, whereas in this you got to push on 4,500-5,000 RPM. So one thing that this gearbox does have, well, it's a function, is I've got auto hold. So something's come up here, says auto hold, and I'm foot off the brake and the car's not going anywhere. If I take that function off and you let go of the brake pedal, the car feels like it's just moving forward, which in fact it is moving forward. So it feels like it's got like a wet clutch or something. So the DCT gearboxes are now being discontinued in like modern M cars. They're all like 8-speed ZFs, which I think are fantastic torque converter gearboxes. But when you got a performance car, I personally would prefer having a DCT gearbox because it brings the whole package together. The DSG gearbox, however, in the VW group cars is still being continued in some iterations, which is quite good, especially with like say the new S3 and whatnot. Like this gearbox is still being used, and I think what's quite cool is the fact that you could get a DSG gearbox in a diesel as well, so you're getting a lot of, like, let's say, you know, double clutchness in a regular car, which is pretty good. Overall, which one do I prefer? Well, I prefer this in like day-to-day point because it's much more easier to use, even though this is a double clutch gearboxes. In terms of RPMs, both cars, when you're doing 70 miles an hour, whether it's this one or my M4, the RPM range is at 2000, and that's pretty much where you got the power band as well, pretty much in both cars. So I'm in like top gear right now, and I'm gonna flick it down a couple of cogs. Yeah, without a delay, it's right into, like, say, the 5th gear. So I really like both of the gearboxes in both of my cars. The DCT gearbox in my M4 makes that feel like a full-on performance car with the double clutch gearbox, gear shifts, you know, being absolutely sharp and on point as well. And the same in this as well. Like the gearbox in this, the DSG gearbox, is very similar to like the DCT. Gear shifts are sharp, makes this whole kind of package come together really well as well. I mean, you can't even get like a manual in these anymore, and it's just great to know that you've got a DSG gearbox where it's actually shifting gears quicker than what you would be doing in the manual anyway, which is pretty cool. The other thing to note is that on my M4 you've got like the gear shift joystick per se, where you can actually shift gears, like let's say with your hand on, like say the gear on the gear shift, whereas here it's just like a switch now, so you don't have that ability where you can like flick the car into manual mode and then shift using the gear shifter, which I do miss. I think if this had like a conventional gear shifter, I think that would make this a little bit more engaging as well, whereas now the only way to do it is through these pedals, which isn't really a bad thing really, because they do work quite well, and you do get like say the DSG fault at times. The sound is quite muted in this car because EU regulations and whatnot, but pretty quick and quite noisy. Anyway guys, I hope you have found this content enjoyable. I'm quite fortunate to have both cars with the kind of application, and I can switch and choose between like which one I want to go out in. If you have found this informative, then give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully guys I'll see you on the next one. Take care, bye.